We already did the pledge, I assume?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right. Everyone okay if we skip that right now?
Yes.
All right, roll call.
1 minute, I gotta switch
Nope,
agendas
that's
really
fine.
quick here, sorry.
Seeing it's changed.
Yeah. Okay. There we go. Okay. Wonder Jim.
Here.
Benek here. Cephas.
Here.
Gardine. Absent. Campbell.
Here.
Dehan.
Here.
And Hybor.
Present. All right. Please note, as a courtesy to the board members of the audience and the Board of Education, please silence your cell phones. Public will only be able to speak during public comment if signed up. Do we have anything? All right, very good. First item, the approval agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. Item number 2, the consent action agenda. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All those in favor? Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to the regular action agenda. MHSAA membership resolution for 2026-2027 is recommended the Board of Education approve the Michigan High School Athletic Association membership resolution in order to join the association for 2026-2027 school year. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right.
So as you probably remember from last year, we do this annually with the MHSAA. We submit this document. This document allows our teams during the 26-27 school year to participate in the tournaments. Any questions about this document?
Nope. All right, anything? All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. 3B, the 2025-2026 final budget amendment. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the resolutions within the 2025-2026 final budget booklet as presented for the following funds: General Fund, Food Service Fund, Student Activity Fund, Capital Projects Fund / Sinking Fund, and Capital Projects Fund / 2024 Bond Fund. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
All right.
Anything for Heather? Okay. You have questions?
I don't have anything on the final. I'm saving them.
All those in favor?
Yes.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. On to 3C, the 2026-2027 budget adoption. It is recommended the Board of Education approve the resolutions within the 2026-2027 budget booklet as presented at the budget hearing on June 1st, 2026 for the following funds: General Fund, Food Service Fund, Student Activity Fund, Capital Projects Fund, Sinking Fund, Capital Projects Fund, 2024 Bond Fund, and the Debt Fund, which is information only. It is further recommended that the mills to be levied on properties located within the Grandville Public School District will be General Fund 18 on all non-homestead properties, Capital Projects Fund / Sinking Fund, 1.3433 mils on all properties, a Headley rollback from 1.4 mils, and Debt Fund of 5.05 mils on all properties. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
Support.
Discussion.
Okay. Anything else, Tim? Any questions?
Heather,
Yes.
you know what my number one question is, right? Why are we at 6.5? Let me give you more in depth as to my thoughts. We have Board Policy 3202. I mean, did we do that as a guideline? A policy is a policy. We know, and I'm going to tell you, I can't say what I said verbatim when we found out about the 31AA funds, but that's what it's there for. But to do that every year is a disservice. I mean, we're all about stewardship here. We need to make sure that we're taking care of this district and we oversee the district. I'm uncomfortable with anything below 7, completely, across the board. I'm just there. I'm not going to change my position. I understand you may not have had the time to do everything based on how everything's shaking out in Lansing versus what we have in front of us. From my perspectives, I'm just going to say, we always say we're a destination district. So is getting and eating away our fund balance one of the requirements of that? Or is it because we're being really good stewards? And I think we just need to strive more to get back to basics. And I understand the discussion, the commentary on the positions. Are there other areas that can be defunded? Because this is the time. We're living at the bottom of the bell curve. Comes around about every 8-9 years. And we're down here about every 3-4 years. And I guess I'm disheartened at that fund balance percentage. So I'll listen now.
I think this isn't going to make you feel better, but based on what I know, I didn't feel comfortable bringing you something at just over 7 and then it not coming to fruition. Right? I've tried to be conservative and not overly conservative, but I wanted it to be truthful. I wanted it to be out there. I want you to be able to see it. So that's where we're at. I know historically, I feel like I've been pretty good at being transparent and accurate and landing where I think we're going to land. But there are a lot of unknowns right now. One of the things that, if you will, that we didn't see coming was we had 3 people rescind their retirements. That's a different ball game, because we would have been able to do something. Even if we had to replace those positions, we would have replaced them at somebody lower on the scale. So those are the things that we have no control over, right? And I do understand other areas we probably do, but I just wanted to be very clear how razor thin we are, and
Hey, Bob.
like I said, it's not going to make you feel better, and
I'd rather have the transparency and the truth
Bob.
and the honest discussion. You know that's the way I am.
I do, yeah.
So if you put the 31 AA in there, you are over 7, and we're not having this conversation. I just
Why are
heard
we
you.
carrying it though?
What's that?
Why would we even carry over 31 AA if we're not going to take it?
Well, I don't believe they're saying they're not going to take it. They just don't know the parameters yet. And so what Heather's telling you is, by showing you this is your worst case scenario, she's being very transparent about that in case they said, no, we're not doing anything different. The odds of that are pretty slim. I'm telling you, they're very slim. And I think they more than likely wind up taking that money. But she could have included it, and we wouldn't even be having this conversation, but she's just trying to be transparent. So,
Well, it would just be
what I
delaying the
heard you say,
conversation.
it sounded like they weren't going to take it. I don't think they've decided that. That's all I want to say.
My take is, okay, we already know the situation with 31 AA, and unless the legislature does something, and I know you got to gamble with politics.
Yep.
Gambling with politics is, I don't know. I don't play the poly market, so.
But that's why I think it's not in there.
And I understand that. I understood that. I listened.
Would you
to
say
it.
it's better than 50% chance that you're?
I would. I think it'll change. I think if they don't change the language and they have yet another year of the same thing that they just had, I mean, you had a majority of your districts not take that money. That money went to other districts who now can't even use it, and now it's going, I mean, spend it all because they got so much, and now it's going back. You're in a campaign year. If you weren't in a campaign year, I'd say, I don't know. But I think there's a better chance that they will change the language, they'll define what it is, and it'll be certain parameters that, I think our district and other districts will be able to say, okay, we can do that.
We're not going to be able to claw back those funds. They're not going to give those out. They're going to reappropriate them because that's what Lansing does.
But there's two
Yeah,
different,
there's-
I understand current year and
Yeah, the current year,
Last year's last year.
I agree with
I
that.
get it.
On that as well.
I'm only looking at,
And I know you are. I know you are. I'm not living in yesterday.
Yeah.
right.
I'm not.
Neither am I. Yep.
It's still to the point of where we're not getting back to basics. We're not. You've got to be holding on to some programming that may not be necessary. And I think we're at the bottom of the bell curve again, and I think this is my third or fourth time I've been in this situation. So, you know what? You don't like listening to me when I say this stuff, but the truth is, it's not going to be all unicorns and sunshine coming up next year. This is something everybody's got to dig out of, especially even on the federal level and how those things are attached.
Yep.
So, and yeah, they play games in Lansing. We all know that. But I would rather, I would rather not hedge on what could come and not whittle down that fund balance. So, I don't think you're ready for this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. What is our expense, if it's interest? Because now, at this level, we will be borrowing to be able to pay bills, will we not?
We will not need to borrow at this level, no. When we were below the 5%, we didn't borrow. We will not need to borrow at this level. We made structural changes to when we pay our staff. It's the 8th and the 23rd. It's the 23rd because that's the latest we can receive our state aid payment. We have 100% summer tax, so that helps offset the month of September where we don't get a state aid payment, right? There are other, don't get me wrong, I don't want to go back there because I do remember holding a couple of large bills and then overnighting them to make sure that we had the funds to do that. So you're right, I don't want to get back in that spot, but at this level, no, we will not need to borrow. Besides that, those applications are already due, so we wouldn't be able to do it for the 26-27 year anyway.
So what percentage does that have to be?
Well, you have to watch your cash flow on that, and so cash flow is slightly different, right, than fund balance. So it,
Sounds like if we were closer to 5%,
Yeah.
you would have to really, there's a chance you might have to borrow.
correct.
So,
Yep.
so this isn't good. Everyone knows that, right? Everyone here agrees this isn't good, right? Where we're at. The question I have, right, and maybe to piggyback on Bob a little bit, right? Even if we had the 31 AA, we're still only at 7.07. Was that what it was? Fund balance?
If you get I didn't do that,
It's still just
but
slightly
yeah,
above 7,
you would
right?
be-
We're at,
We're not-
I think we were like
You wouldn't
7.65 or
have-
something.
If you got the 31 AA for
Yep.
26-27,
Yeah.
800 and some $1,000 that they said, you're at a $300,000 surplus for this coming school, for the 26-27 school year approximately. Again, still razor thin in terms of like, I would like to continue to add back more, but at best, like you said, it's a little over break even
Right.
with the 31 AA.
So the question that I have, again, trying to build on that, is, okay, so that's a slow incremental build that you look at some of those other, years on there, right? We were going from 6 to 7 to 8 to 9, right? That kind of build isn't getting us there that quickly, right? Couple hundred thousand every year isn't getting us back to where we want to get to 10. I mean, that's going to take us forever, right? To get back to 10%. Am I wrong? I don't know the numbers well enough. If you keep adding 100,000?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
So what gets us to the next increments that we want to get to that quicker, that 10% quicker?
Yeah.
Does that make sense what I'm asking?
I think, and then we started talking as a team. We need to look, going in and planning ahead for 27, 28, how we restructure how we do our intervention and potentially restructure how we do some of the behavior support pieces that we have. We built something really great over the course of time, and we want to continue again to provide those supports going forward. Well, we're going to have to look at that really closely at 27, 28, see what other districts are using, how they're using those funds, which ways they're doing it, and we're going to have to reallocate how we make that happen. Because that's an area where, Bob, to your point, we probably need to pull back into that a little bit, but we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater if we don't have to. And so that's a piece where we've got to really dig into that for that coming year, right? I think the other thing that can help us is when we get back into, we'll be negotiating contracts again next year. So if we can get a 2 or a 3 year agreement, if we get a 2 or a 3 year agreement, it's a little easier to look down the road and say, all right, so here's what we have in year 1. We know this is what it's going to be in year 2. We know this is what it's going to be in year 3, and we can work our way through that piece of it. We're further reducing on the cleaning side of it. We've had one company come and talk to us about potentially doing a third party for some of our other positions that might save us a little bit of money. Obviously, we're reducing the supports that we're doing at the administrative side of things. Those are all the pieces that we've got to start getting better at. We've got to take the year to really dig into those for that 27, 28. So to your point, yeah, we don't build it back to 10% at $100,000 to $200,000 to $300,000 a year. We don't.
So don't take this wrong.
I won't.
Your desire to hold on to this behavior process. If you were to go back and reinstitute maybe an older way, have you looked at what you would save? I'm going back to my statement of back to basics, John.
Yeah.
That's where I'm at.
Yeah.
I'll be very, I think you figured it out. I can't approve this budget. I can't. Not in the current, not with this current fund balance.
But Bob, I'm curious what you mean by back to basics, right? What do you define as basics? Because I mean, when I hear that, right, and this is just my own bias, and I'll say it, right? When I hear that, to me it intimates that we're doing something so outside the norm that it's wasteful, right? So, it may be part of what you mean, but I'm just trying to understand what programs are you talking about that you were saying, hey, we need to get rid of to. I don't know. I'm just curious.
I don't know specifically. PBIS, SEL, the things that we're paying aides and other things to do. You're going to get to a point where you're just going to increase class size. And if a teacher had a difference between maybe that or class size, I think they wouldn't pick class size. It's getting back to the traditional, how do you handle behavior issues? When COVID occurred, we had an abundance of funds, and we invested in a lot of these programs that I agree you want to hold on to them. That's fine. I agree that you want to. I don't agree that we need to, not with this fund balance amount. So that's what I talk about. So you're tracking with me perfectly, Jason. That's what I was going after,
What are programs that we still hang on to that came about during COVID?
So since COVID, we added intervention teachers at every one of our elementary buildings to help continue to build that structure for our kids that are in the tier 2 and tier 3 side of things. We also added SEL coaches in every one of our buildings, K-12, to help do some of those small groups for kids that when we listen to and talk to them about where they're at, like in managing their own emotions, managing their behaviors, we can put them into small groups and be able to support them. Those are a lot of the things that we added during that time, because coming out of that space, we saw a large increase in the way that students were able to kind of self-regulate, right? And so we're trying to figure out how do we help, support that self-regulation, because if they don't have that, they can't learn the content. And so it's trying to find that balance between where is that minimal level of support that you can give in those areas, both academically and behaviorally, at the K-12 level, and still be able to have your kids move forward academically and get to their highest potential, right? And that's a part that is really difficult from a school standpoint to try to find that balance to work. And that's, to your point, Bob, that's what we need to start looking into at a much more in-depth level going into the coming year to say, okay, we're going to have to do this very differently if we're going to maintain it, because it's not sustainable long-term.
And it was never meant, it wasn't sustainable. ESSR funds were a gift. And you, I know, granted,
Yep,
I'm not going to say you guys didn't manage them well.
yep.
We put,
But the
we
faucet-
we did what, with that money, what it should have been done with it. We put it into people to support kids at that time. There were districts who didn't, who are sitting on very fat fund balances, who quite honestly would probably end up having to pay very big salaries to their staffs because they didn't put their money into those things. So,
But
Yeah.
it came from the federal government, and it can't be sustainable on our own. We have not been, we're not self-reliant.
Yeah.
I look at my fund balance, it says I'm not self-reliant. So
And
you gotta look to cut somewhere, and hopefully, you do it as painlessly as possible,
Yep.
but no cut is not, every cut's painful. I get that. Sorry.
No, that's okay. My was going to say, if we'd had the $31 AA this year, that we had budgeted for, because that was something that we have regularly used to help support those programs, we're fine.
we wouldn't be having this conversation.
But we didn't cut SEL, we didn't cut security, we didn't remove nurses, we didn't remove all of those services that we have tied into those funds, because we need our security guards to make sure our kids are safe. We need our nurses to make sure that the medical needs of our kids are met. And they're logging in that C4S now, and we're going to look at some revenue that comes in from there. And so we don't want to offload anyone that's logging in C4S before we start to understand what the impact of that revenue coming in might be. And we're not going to be able to really predict that until the fall, because we haven't had the volume of people logging in that space. And that's where I say, from a revenue standpoint, I know we're going to see some revenue. I just don't know what it is. And if we need to make cuts mid-year, if we need to drive our way backward because we can't do this, and we can't do this, and we can't do this, and we're in worst case scenario, that's something that we're going to have to look at.
That was the question I was going to ask. The
Yeah.
31 AA, we should know if we're going to get that or not, October, November?
We should hopefully we'll know by the end of July.
Right.
Because, and I am gonna say end of July now, because there was a comment made by an individual on the legislative level that said basically that they weren't gonna get it done. And I think that, again, is just a negotiation tactic, but, yeah, I would say by the end of July, early August, we should know if we're able to accept those or not, because that means that they will have approved a state aid budget.
So we'll know that before the school year starts, or should, if they move forward, which I think they will, because they want to get out and get into the election piece.
John, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, what is the likelihood, you had started to go there, that
Yeah.
if the funding doesn't come in, that we could start making cuts throughout the school year
Yeah, we'd have to.
get to this 7% or more?
Yeah, we have to. And like I said, we're razor thin in our classrooms, right? And so those reductions are going to will end up coming in those non-classroom places. And we'll have to.
We've never, we've consistently looked, especially at kindergarten enrollment too. We'll have a better idea. And I think with the exception of a year ago, maybe even 2 years ago, we've at last minute added kindergarten. We're not going to be doing that. And I know that's not popular. I understand that class sizes in some areas have increased, but overall, to pay the overload is less than adding staff to teach 17 kids when you're, when your caseload is 24.
Does What data points, pardon me, do you have data points that still support the use of SEL and for the other interventionists? I'm assuming there's a lot of data that supports that.
Yeah.
The amount, I know that teachers are encouraged to track behavior problems on their, through
Yep.
data collection, right?
Yep.
And I'm assuming that that still is being supported for the use of that money for the SEL people that we have in place.
Yes, I mean, we have all the data that says that we're making great strides in those places. We also have evidence that says that we lean on our tier 2 a little more heavily than we should, and it takes us out of the tier 1 side of things. And that's kind of Bob's point of, when you say we've got to get back to basics, we have some evidence that tells us we lean too heavily on our tier 2 supports. So it impacts the work that we're doing at the tier 1 level. And so those are things that we've got to look at now that we have that evidence and that data. We've got to look at that really closely and say, all right, so if we're leaning too heavily on these tier 2 supports that we created, the tier 2 supports are carrying us through, but the tier 1 isn't shifting in the midst of that. And we talked a lot about that during my interview. That's an area that we've really got to dig in and drive into that. At the same time, you still have to have some system of support in and around behavior, social emotional learning, and academic intervention to make sure that you're giving the support where it's needed, particularly at the K-6 level.
So I would imagine, if we're looking at increased class sizes, the incidences of behavioral issues interrupting learning is probably, I'm guessing, going to increase.
Yeah,
And not to have those supports available for when you have a very crowded classroom and one teacher dealing with all of that, that's going to be kind of a crisis or flashpoint too, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, potentially. I don't know, when I started in 2003, I had pretty big class sizes and we didn't have a lot of that stuff. But
Yeah.
kids' needs were different then,
Right.
right? Expectations of school districts were a little different.
And that's true. I've had huge classes
Yep.
that, no problems, small
Correct.
classes riddled with it. It just depends.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so that's the part where we need to get. We need to be able to support where we can support, but not lean so heavily into our tier 2 that it takes the place of tier 1 instruction. And we are finding, even though we have success in those areas, there's evidence that indicates that we're leaning too heavily on our tier 2 to carry our tier 1. And we've got to figure that piece out.
Are we seeing the students that are entering now, like the kindergarten, first, second grade, in recent years, do they have as much need for support as what the kids did coming out of COVID? I mean, is it going backwards, like in those grade levels, or is it?
We haven't seen a significant shift toward pre-COVID kindergarten and first grade behavior yet, but we're still coming out of that for our littles.
Yeah, and so last year, if I can jump in,
Yep.
they just published some data, I saw it today, about our highest numbers ever of preschool enrollment through GSRPE and the move toward universal preschool. So the hope would be that now that we're back and increasing those experiences, the theory was that during COVID, people pulled back on those. And so when they entered kindergarten, they hadn't had those foundational experiences yet. So in the next couple of years, we should see if those things start to change.
I have 2 questions.
Yeah.
First one is there any other fallout to keeping our fund balance percentage at 6.50? I mean, what are the ramifications of that in the future?
So over the next coming year, I do think that is worst case scenario, is the 6.5.
Doesn't affect any.
You're saying like our rating or bond rating.
Bond
No,
rating,
because
is there any effect
the reason we had the reason we had that rating call was because of the elections that we passed, the sinking fund, et cetera. We're not going to be scheduled for another rating call with Moody's until we go back out for something, if we determine that we can go back out for something.
Okay, so there's no real issue there then?
No.
Then is this just a matter of, do we need to change the board policy if this happens? Anybody know that?
Why have a board policy then? I mean, we put it there. I'm questioning it. We put it there. And
I think
It's moved.
the thought process between having that in policy was that we needed to alert you of the fact that, hey, this is going to happen. And I think also it gives that feedback of getting back to the basics and looking and defining programs more granularly that may be able to be cut back on. And then we take that as, here's kind of our walking orders, which I think we've tried to come to you and say, yeah, we need to do this and we need your support when we look at reducing certain areas. So, or the opposite, you know, when class sizes are increased, because yeah, that does impact, and sometimes it impacts some, but not all, right? I think, I know when we first talked about the fund balance percentage, and I know it's been years ago, I thought that was kind of the thought process and the ramification of it. I could be wrong, and maybe we need to go
No,
look
you're-
at
you're
exactly
accurate.
how it's written.
You're
But
accurate.
that's
It
that's
was-
kind of what.
It was designed to alert you that, I mean, you made a statement that you do not want it to go below 7. If it goes below 7, that the district administration needed to make a plan to get back above 7.
correct.
Yeah. And I hear Heather saying that's what they're doing. They're telling you, worst case scenario, it's below 7, and they have a plan to get it back there. When in fact, if 31 AA is changed, it would already be back there, but yet that does not change the approach they need to have moving forward
Yeah.
in this budget.
Until the funding is no longer there because
Well,
of some other
It-
thing.
Well, but I think that's the thing that I think, and John would agree with me, even if we get the 31 AA, we're still looking at these things.
Right.
So,
I understand that.
but,
Yeah.
and two, like, I guess, like, outside of these walls, right, sometimes when we do make those tough decisions, you're gonna hear things that people may not be supportive of, right? But just remembering that all of the things that we have discussed and the importance of the why.
Yep.
I'm going to say this again. I'm going to say this again, and I'll say it as many times as I have to say it, Heather. I think, based on 25 years of being here, you are by far the best we've had in this position. I respect you. I value your statement. If statements like that come out, I either talk to the superintendent or I try and understand more about it. But you're between a rock and a hard place, and I know that. And, you know, I'm sorry if, you know, I offended in any way, but I think you appreciate the fact that you'd rather have it straight from me. Because, I mean, I'm here as a steward.
So the wording in that is interesting where it says the unassigned funds. And then you showed us a bunch of in-out dollars when you were looking at the general fund and the percentages. The wording in that policy is unassigned funds. Unassigned general funds, right? So when you show those in and out, are those defined as assigned so they shouldn't be counted? I was just trying to understand a little bit more about why, you know, that wording, because again, it's very interesting. I didn't quite understand the
Yeah,
wording
so-
in that policy as well as why we showed that.
Because those, like you said, yes, they're in and out, and so they're very restricted. They're restrictive, and what they do is they inflate your
Yeah, your overall numbers.
They
Yeah, I get
inflate
it.
your
Yeah.
total number, and so yeah, if you don't exclude those,
Yeah. Or if you exclude those, yeah.
right? I mean, I'm sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
If you exclude them, then it bumps it up, and so
So what was the purpose of saying unassigned funds?
Okay.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand
I
the
don't know
wording.
if
Yeah.
when you walked in at that point,
I did.
but Don't
Sorry,
worry about
sorry.
it. Don't worry about it. It's a test. Maybe you did that so that, where are we listing? It's unassigned because there's no expense tied to that particular fund. It's a free fund. It's extra. So it's unassigned. I think that's a simple way of saying that.
So those restricted dollars, those are considered signed funds? Are those part of the signed funds?
When they look at it from an audit perspective, your deficit is your unassigned funds, basically.
So those in and out, are those in and outs assigned funds?
The in and outs, I guess, no, because they're not available. Like what Bob is saying, they're not available dollars to spend, right?
But that's why you took them out and you showed us the remainder of the budget, showed us at a
Correct, yes.
above.
So they would not.
Right.
They're net zero.
They would
So
be
I'm saying-
essentially, they would essentially be assigned because you can only use them for those purposes,
Yeah.
so they are not.
So then if we look at it, where were we at with 6.83? What was it for 2026, 2027 without
Let me
those?
throw this back over here so we can all see it.
I don't know. Slide 11 or 12.
So, yes, when you're adjusted, which would mean you've removed those that are assigned.
Okay, so is that what we're saying then? Is unassigned, we're still at 7.13? Because you removed your assigned funds, right?
Correct. You were,
So with unassigned, that's why we're just understanding, we're trying to understand
Okay,
the
you're
wording
playing
behind
with
them.
numbers here. You're playing with numbers, because
I get it.
historically,
Yeah.
no, that's fine.
and I'm just saying, but then that's why I show it like that, because
Historically,
historically, that's what we've,
We have said as a percentage of expenses. We have
Okay.
always done that. The number you see, that's the number you see when it's ever
Got it.
summarized.
Okay, I was just trying to understand
No,
the
that's
particulars
fine.
of that word.
You weren't here during that.
Yeah.
I don't think you were.
Question, so just based on the assumptions with the contracts, are those pretty much finalized now? So we have a good idea that, like, the budgeted amount for expenses, or can we maybe expect some changes?
I am confident we won't have any additional changes beyond what's there.
Okay.
So we talked, when I worked with both EAs related to it, they have to take it to a group that's called MABO. That's kind of their OPEC, for lack of a better term, of people that kind of, they're schools that come together and say, here's what our minimums are going to be, and it's got to pass, they got to have it kind of pass that space. And then they have to have it pass their membership. So their membership has to approve it. I was holding off on their membership approving it before I bring it to the board. The intent is to bring it to the board at our next meeting. I should be
Okay.
able to do that. But when I talked with both of our EA presidents, they needed the time to present where they were, right?
Okay.
Because it's less than a cost of living increase for their group, and they're just trying to figure out how do they work their way forward and try to understand how they landed there with their group. But I anticipate that'll get passed by the group. I anticipate I'll be able to bring just that
Okay.
to the board in June. I don't anticipate any dramatic changes to that.
Okay,
And then
okay.
it's just that increase, that percent increase gets applied across the board. And so that was we kind of settled those out late last week with both groups.
Okay.
Which finally gave us an opportunity to say,
Right,
okay, so now we really truly think we can understand our full expenses. It was about the time that we had started talking about some of the administrative roles in addition to what we'd already kind of reduced. It allowed us to land a little more closely. And we understood who our retirees were and which positions we had to fill and which ones we didn't have to fill and how we could slide those around. Because the difference in that AP psych between posting it and not posting it's about 60 grand. Even if you just hire a brand new teacher, it's about 65 grand actually total cost. And so we would have been 65 grand less of expenditure, but we needed to do it. So.
Okay. Also, so we talked a little bit about sort of looking at more of those sort of instructional costs, even though it's sort of SEL and some of that, but that kind of goes in that sort of area. I'm curious about if you could just provide, because I did see there were kind of reductions across the board, and I appreciate how you sort of took that approach, because I know it's hard. Are there areas that you're considering more non-instructional, student-facing costs, areas where you might be able to cut some funds? I mean, I know everybody loves we have great programming, we have great extracurriculars and all of those, but are there areas that we might be able to draw back a bit?
Yeah, so we're looking at transportation routes.
Okay.
We're looking at drop-onlys for certain athletic events.
Okay, yeah.
I live in a different district, and I played my counterpart here in soccer. Him and I out on the field, right? We played against each other. And at Byron, and afterwards he was like, "Wait, you guys are drop only?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Well, how long have you been drop only?" "Well, we've been drop only since my kids started high school." And I think they were drop only before that as well. And I had a baseball player, a soccer player. We unfortunately got bumped from the OK Red to the OK Green. I only say that because I love when we could play against Grandville, and my kids had a lot of friends on travel teams from other districts in the OK Red. And we go to Grand Haven, we're drop only for baseball. Like, that's a hike from Caledonia. So, I mean, we're looking at all of that. Now,
Okay.
we would try to slow roll that as much as we could.
Right,
No pun
exactly.
intended, but, so we're looking at that. There was another area, you said non-instructional. We've made some non-instructional cuts already.
Right.
Custodial, on the custodial side, we're talking through reducing our day porters. In a lot of our buildings, we have 2 or 3 or 4 people at some of our elementary buildings. We already reduced 7 positions starting in April. We'll probably reduce another 7. That's what she talked about, like shrinking the summertime hours that we had there. So that's a part of it. We are going to more intentionally use the funds that our parents raise athletically.
Yeah.
So if you have a group of parents that raise a bunch of money on the athletic side, before we pull into that athletic budget, which comes out of our general fund, we're going to be saying, look, you need to use the activity fund. You have parents that raise the money right now. Use the money right now. Because we had some of those budgets that were starting to grow, right? We do fantastic work in and around our student assistance funds. So we're starting to say, how can we utilize those in an even more direct way for our kids, which again layers out some of that general fund cost in other places. So we've started looking at all of those things, and we don't want to get to a place like we talked about copies before, right? And it hit the fan when we did. The reality is, if everybody cut, like we had talked about, if everybody cut like 25% of their copies, so at the elementary level it was like 1 per kid per day, and at the high school level it was 1 per kid per week, 1 piece of paper, we could save $100,000 a year in copy costs, right? So there are some really specific things that we can do, but we don't want to put a limit on the number of copies that people can get, right? Because when I started, I could do 100 copies a month. That was my limit. Anything beyond that, I had to go pay for it. We don't want to get to that point, but we have to find those reductions. We're looking at continuing to reduce the number of subs that we have for district-related time. We made a huge reduction in the number of days that we had there this year. We're going to continue to look at that again for next year to pull back on the district-related sub times so that we keep our teachers in their classes and we're not paying that additional sub rate as a part of that, right? We're talking about lowering our sub rate, even if we lower it by $5 or $10 per day, the amount of money that can save us over time, even though like we want our folks to show up, but at the same time, if the difference between having somebody maybe show up as a sub or having our teachers, our paras, our student supports in the right spaces, that's a place where we can look at that piece as well. And there are lots of avenues where we can get sub permits and things like that for teachers, for hourly employees inside of our district that have 60 credits or more, where they can slide into those spaces when they get paid the regular rate or the increased rate for sub rate, depending on what's greater, but it still saves us time and money on that side of it too. So all of those things are
going into,
Part and parcel of the things that we're doing. We needed to replace one of our pickups this year, and we said, nope, sorry, we're not replacing the pickup this year. Like, it's those kinds of things that we're looking at every pocket of dollars that we have to save as many jobs as we can, because our most valuable resource are our people. And we've got to do everything that we can to keep our people with our kids and still provide that great service that we provide to our community.
yeah, it's tough. I mean, like, I think, unfortunately, it kind of looks like this downturn in terms of funding is probably going to be here for a bit. I'm not seeing any positive news that we're going to see things go up.
Yep.
But, at the same time, I think our families in the district also understand. I think everybody's, things are getting much more expensive.
Yep.
But I appreciate giving us the worst case scenario. But yeah, I think it makes sense to try and find where we can cut over time,
Yep.
as opposed to having kind of an emergency cut.
Yep.
So.
Joe, you said you had 2 questions. I think you only got one.
No, I got them both. To change the policy, do we need to change the policy then?
Okay.
6.5,
Yeah, I got it.
whatever, but it sounds like we can keep it at 7.
Felt like we missed your second one, sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah.
What, from your experience, Bob, just because I'm curious, from your experience, what turns it around? Like you say, it's a bell curve and then we're down. What turns it around, or Roger, you've been around for a long time too.
Economy.
7 years,
Just-
I've been through it 3 times, just like he has, in different places. So.
Pretty much it's the economy. The first major downturn was when the school aid fund was tapped into, or allowed to be tapped into, by higher education. And then they took about almost 20% of what was in there for them. And you look at a college or a university that's got millions and hundreds of millions and billions of dollars in endowment, that is not us, right? And they're not really controlled. It's typically the economy. And job creation, right? How well things are, expensive things, and then what's the job market like? Is there growth in any particular, overall in the state, in every particular area, whether it's large manufacturing or small business? And as that ramps up, and you have government policies that sort of strive to build business and to put money in people's pockets, then the growth comes. And it's usually about 2 years after that you start going up the bell curve. You're about halfway up the bell curve. But it's about a 7 or 8 year, and you're down 4 to 5 years, you're down at the bottom. And I think we've hit our lowest, but we're still at the bottom. But that's really it. Because when you look at revenue, for me, and there's a lot of people that talk about, they're going after property taxes, right? They want to get rid of that, some candidates. Well, increase the sales tax. Just increase the sales tax. That'll take care of a lot of that stuff, right? So it's the economy. It's the economy. I actually think next year will be a little better than this year, but again, I think it's 2 years away. But Michigan needs to grow. We're not a growth state. How many people have left this state? It's, you look at Florida and Texas, for the love of God, they spend a lot of money on schools because they've got that revenue. And Florida's getting rid of their property taxes. I think they just passed that. So it's all sales tax.
Yeah, I've been through it 3 times. 2000s, 2000 to 2010 rate in there was terrible.
Brutal.
We were laying people off every year. You were trying, and the key is when it goes like this, try to make it go like this. I mean, so it's not as deep and try, you have to get creative. And that's the swing we're in right now. That's why you're hearing them talk about, you're looking at everything, you're evaluating everything, you're trying to get creative in how can you provide the best services possible, yet you're at a time where you don't have that revenue to go, yeah, we could do that, yeah, we could try that. It's more like, how can we just, you make it the best, and realize for the last couple of years, we have been cutting significant amounts. It's just through attrition. We've been fortunate. We've had a lot of people retire. And this year, we don't have that. We don't have that big number, and therefore, you're having to get even more creative, which is what we're trying to do here. So.
And earlier, when Heather showed the fund balance getting low, Ron wanted to do a lot of investment, right? We went into fiber, we did things that were supposed to set us up, and I believe that they actually did, but it was incredibly painful. And if I get ugly, it's because I've been through it. I hate going through it. And I will tell you, the most deceptive time was 2009. And so, right, you got banks, we didn't know what was doing. And then the one thing that came out of Obama, which was such bull, was we got shovel-ready jobs. We got shovel-ready money. If you got shovel-ready projects, we're going to give you hundreds of millions of dollars. It only happened with their pet areas. So much money and energy went into that stuff. And I'm going to say it's a small percentage of school districts nationwide that actually saw any of that money. So it was a boondoggle. And it was so disappointing. And I think what extended it this time was COVID. I think we would have hit it earlier if we didn't have those ESSR funds coming in for so long.
We were doing some things just before we could sense that it was happening, and then COVID hit, and then those funds came in. And like I said, we put our money into our people to support our kids during that time, and we added a lot of positions, you're right, during that time to support kids. And some people didn't do that. They didn't do it. And so there are fund balances that are very different right now. I sleep well at night knowing we put our money into our kids because that's where it was supposed to go. But, we are where we are because you're in a situation where you have to get creative with the support you have, because your core instruction right now, your classrooms, you're at limits in a lot of places. So you can't do anything there. It's going to have to be figuring out what supports are giving you the biggest bang for the buck and going with those, and the other ones you'll have to probably cut over time. And hopefully that's not if you can get creative and some things can happen, you can not do that as deep as we've had to in some years of this.
When I was first on the board, Mipser's was 8%. Yeah. Scary, isn't it?
Going back to something Jason said, though, in terms of trying to get to a 10% fund balance, you'd have to make bigger reductions, but it doesn't seem like that's something that we would really want to entertain either. It seems like we'd want to, if we're in the bell curve that comes up, we'd want to be trying to stay around the 7% so that we keep the programming, I guess, as good as we can for the...
Well, and I think, if we stayed at 7%, if the funding comes back, we get to 8% without changing anything.
Right.
Or we get to 10% without changing anything. So that becomes the I hate to say the game of chicken, right? But it's like, it's like,
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah, it's listen, we have these conversations all the time, and the private sector too, right? No one wants to cut staffing because you don't know if you're going to be able to get that staffing back, right? I mean, and so it's like, that's one of the last things you want to do, because if you've got good staff, you want to hold on to them as long as you possibly can. Where can I cut every cent from every other spot before I go there? Now, having said that, again, I do think, we are a lot of things to a lot of people, right? And I think we have a lot of programming that we do, right? And a lot of extracurriculars, a lot of other things. And I don't know if that is a small fraction of the whole budget, right? And it's like, you're chasing, you're tripping over dollars, to get to pennies, right? Or if there's something there. I don't know. I just don't know the budget well enough to say, hey, there's opportunities there that we may have to, get rid of our truck driving school. I don't know what it is, right? I mean, but yeah.
We're not rerunning our aeronautics program this
Right.
year, right? So I mean, we can't hold that up. And so a lot of those programming things we're already pulling back on and kind of getting closer to where we were 10 years ago. But again, as much as we can hold on to and try to find that balance, depending on where that revenue stream is available to find us. 31A, we should know by the end of summer. The other pieces we should know by early to mid-fall on the Medicare side. We'll have a much better sense of what the revenue side is. And if we have additional areas that we've got to make reductions, we will do that.
And sometimes we see resignations before school starts.
Right.
August, so you never know there either.
What is the trade-off, between someone that's ready to retire and someone new? You said $60,000 about the cost, right? Is it a $60,000 swing at the end of the day between the retirement and the salary and what the new person's coming in, or?
What I utilize is, because you've given us the authority to not go above a MA7, so conservative savings are probably around $45,000, because when people are leaving, they're well over 100.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's.
Yeah, but if we can hire,
But
if you end
we-
up hiring a year one or a year two teacher,
it's-
you gain another $15,000 to $18,000, depending on whether they have a bachelor's degree or a master's degree.
And it's conservative because I don't know if they're coming in and they need full family health
Right,
insurance. So I always budget for that, which again, there's another, if you're going from 22,000 at full family that the district's incurring costs for, down to 9 per single, so.
Understand.
Well, I know I don't look it, but I was raised in a Dutch family, so I appreciate how frugal and how you're trying to cut all the corners as much as possible. I can hear it. And I guess I just want to say that as we continue on, I'm so glad that we're really prioritizing the fact that our staff, who, you look at the graduates we had this year, tremendous group of students, they didn't get there by themselves. They got there because we had tremendous staff behind them all the way, and we want to keep them here. So I know it's a fine line, I get it, but that's got to also weigh in there as well. That we keep them incentivized to stay with this district.
A lot of discussion. Thank you, everybody. Any other questions? All right. Voting on 3C. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes. 3D, the recommendation for Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources. It is recommended the Board of Education approve Michael Gelmy as the new Assistant Superintendent for Human Resources in combination with his central elementary principal duties. Can I get a motion?
So moved. Support.
Now the tough questions. I thought that was bad.
So we had a couple internal candidates. The cabinet and myself met with them. Over the last 3 years, Mike has completed his ed specialist degree. He's working toward his doctorate because he thinks maybe when he's all done with this gig, he might want to go support kids in college and do some things there. We're going to tell him it's like 10, 12 years down the road maybe, but that's an area where he really wants to jump in. He, 2 years ago, said, like, tell me about this HR deal. Like, it might be something I'm interested in. So I had him come in to negotiations this past year and just help kind of sit in. It was a twofold benefit for me. Number one, he brought that elementary lens from an administrative side to the negotiation process, which was really great. But he has such a great experience having come in from Hamilton and then working at TK as a principal of a 400-student elementary building with one parapro and no assistants or any of those things. And what's that? 500 kids, sorry. Don't want to undersell that for you. But just a wealth of experience coming into the district from that space, and has done a fantastic job at Central. And so as he and I kind of talked about what does this look like going into next year, obviously it allows us to save on the expense side because we're not going to be replacing that central principal role, at least within the next year. And so he and I talked about like what are the things that he can grab and start to learn and grow in, and what are some of the things that, because I've been doing it for 8 years, that I can kind of do on clockwork, especially with my fantastic assistant Kim. I call her the queen of HR because she is. Between her and I, we can kind of do a lot of those support roles and some of those pieces to try to help get that piece there. And Mike also, the secretary at Central has transferred to Cummings because that's her home building, and so I think it also creates just that other level and layer of stability for Central that I think will be really important. There will be times when Mike has to be out of the building, obviously, so layering in some support with some of our other elementary principals if they're willing to swing in and come over. Obviously, Dr. Merkel has extensive experience as an elementary principal. And there's a secondary principal that has expressed some interest in potentially being an elementary principal that will give an opportunity to swing in and do that as well. But, I mean, gosh, Mike's staff, they don't need Dr. Merkel. They don't need another elementary principal. They don't need a high school assistant principal to come in and sort that out if Mike needs to be out, because he's been out a little more than probably most, having coming over for negotiations. He comes over every Wednesday and sits in our cabinet meetings to lend that elementary lens from a person who's sitting in an elementary principal seat. So I think he's the perfect addition to our team. I think he lends, again, that elementary piece to my cabinet to give me that sense. Roger always carried it from before, having been an elementary guy, and so just really important to have an additional elementary person as a part of that group with us so that they can kind of speak in on that.
So what do you see the breakdown of Mike's movement in and out of the building,
So
percentage-wise?
he's going to spend most of his time focusing in on the Title IX, the investigations. He's going to be the liaison between our EAs and our staff. So any one of the principals that's struggling with a kid from a discipline standpoint, like even now, sometimes they call Roger, sometimes they call me. I think that will still be a split role. Some of the paper documentation, the building of contracts, like we do paper contracts for all of our teachers, for all of our coaches, all 3 seasons, for all of our all of those things are things that I can just roll with and take care of on my end. But obviously in the role that I'm in, I can't be the lead investigator on staff issues or any other issues that come across our desk, because you need somebody that's there so that as a superintendent, you can hear those pieces and be the decision maker in those spots. And so that'll kind of be where Mike leans into it, particularly inside of year 1. I believe, based on my own experience, that there'll be times that he'll be able to do that even from from the office at Central, be able to be kind of that liaison. And then in those moments when we know that he's going to have to be out to be doing some investigation in other places or doing some of those touch points, that's where we'll be able to plan ahead and say, all right, so we're going to potentially need this person, or you're on call, and here's how we're going to work through that. But and Mike can tell you, he sent it out to his staff, and he had 3 teachers reach out already and be like, what can we do to help? We know you're going to be out of the building. What are some areas that we can help support? Because we think you're going to be great in that role, and we're grateful we get you for another year. So, but that's how we're going to start that. And we'll continue to evaluate it, right? If it becomes too much of a huge issue and it makes it difficult so that he can't do either of those roles well, and I can't do mine plus the other part of that well, we're going to have to evaluate that as we go. But
So you sort of answered it, but you didn't.
okay.
What's the percentage?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the percentage.
No, that's fine. You gave me all the details is what it would be. So now the easy
Yeah.
answer.
My guess is he'll be 40% with the assistant super role and 60% with the principal.
Okay, all right, great. I think one of the things, and again, the legacy of Central
Yeah,
is the administrators that have been in that building, it pretty much runs itself. The staff are an incredible team, and I think it's probably because it's a single section, right?
Not anymore.
not anymore.
We're 2 sections. We're actually the 3rd smallest school.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Bigger than West.
Nice, well, now you got a bigger challenge.
Right.
All right, still 60-40. But Central just has this DNA that no other elementary has in this
Yep.
district.
Yes.
I believe that anyway. And yeah, to me, this is a major challenge, but I guess whenever you get a major challenge, the other thing is you learn a lot during those challenges.
Yep. And to your point, Bob, I don't know that we would have been able to do it. There might maybe one other elementary school that it could have worked at in terms of how the staff kind of rallies in. We have great staff, but when you talk about the DNA of a staff, that if the principal's not there, they can roll with it. That's another part of the reason why I believe that this is going to work for this year.
Good.
And
Nice.
it's budget conscious.
Got it.
And we have to be as budget conscious as we can.
All right.
I love the fact we're pulling from the farm.
That's the plan.
I love it. I love it. We have such talented people here. I mean, it's one of the pride points that I love to talk about Grandville, is the depth of our administrators and how well they run their areas. So I'm excited about that.
So Hamilton is, you're the three, Kim? So does Hamilton have the truck driving school? Who's got the truck driving? Is it Hastings or Hamilton?
Is Hamilton have a truck driving school?
One of them's got a CDL. So one of them's got a CDL program. I was just reading about that like last week. They had like 6 people graduating from it this year as they, yeah. They have a CDL program, yeah. But it was either Hamilton or Hastings. I couldn't remember which. Anyway.
So it makes sense in Hamilton. They've got a lot of farm drivers out there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pull
So,
a bunch of
hey.
grain around.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Fair enough. Any other questions, comments, discussion? All right. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Yes.
Opposed? Motion passes. No public comment. All right. The next regular meeting of the Grandville Board of Education will be Monday, June 15th, 2026 at the Administration Building. We are adjourned.